Welcome to another episode of GEEK Master. As usual, I'm your host, Cassius Samuels. I figured since it's been a while since I did my last podcast, now would be the perfect time for me to jump back behind the microphone and give you guys my wise and expert opinion on DC's latest mega event, Convergence. As you guys probably are aware, if not, Convergence was scheduled to cover DC's ass as the organization moved their head office from New York to California. But Convergence to me was an event that suffered a proliferation of problems such as slow pacing, an oversized cast, and inconsistent art. Not to mention, it was confusing as hell due to poor, erratic writing from Jeff Kreen and Scott Lobel and their lack of imagination, which ended up giving the event a feeling of fatuousness. With that being said though, as a die-hard DC fan, I didn't hate everything about the event. I did find some of the tie-ins to be quite enjoyable, but before I get ahead of myself and start rambling off on some kind of incoherent train of thought, let me start just by trying to concisely explain what I didn't like about the event, why I didn't like it, and that way I can finish the podcast on a positive note by explaining what I did like about it. So, just jumping right in, for me, the story leading up to Convergence featuring the heroes from Earth 2 that mainly focused on their struggle against the forces of Apocalypse was superlative to me. That was one of the high points of the event. The Earth 2 stories the writing was magnificently assiduous, the artwork was breathtaking, the premise was golden. I mean, there was really nothing negative that I can say about the story leading up to Convergence. But once Convergence finally arrived, it seemed like all of the momentum that was built up suddenly just evaporated, disappeared into thin air. For one, Telos as a villain just didn't do it for me. He was severely underwhelming, and so was Deimos. Apparently Deimos is a part of the DC universe from some comics featuring Warlord or something from like 1975. I don't know. He just shows up at Convergence and he's supposed to be one of the main villains. But between him and Telos, at no time throughout the entire story did I ever feel like they were a real existential threat to the multiverse or anyone in it for that matter. And I felt even less of Deimos' character as the story went on. Like, he showed up for a couple issues until Parallax destroyed him, but it was just like, I don't know, like, he was just there to be destroyed and get to the end of the story, like, you know, like he really had no purpose. At least Telos was created by Brainiac, so that kind of gave him street cred in my eyes. But Deimos he never came across to me as a legitimate villain, basically. The whole villain situation seemed to be mishandled because as a reader, you're led to believe that Brainiac is going to be the main antagonist of the event, but it turns out that Brainiac plays absolutely no role in the event until the very end, which kind of left me feeling a great sense of apathy towards the entire event once it concluded. From a writing standpoint, Brainiac's sudden change of heart at the end of the event that resulted in him basically undoing everything he'd done leading up to Convergence, you know, everything that he painstakingly put effort into, the whole situation, he just decided to undo it, and the whole effect that they were going for came across as tenuous to me, tenuous and lazy at best, and horrendously awful at worst. The writer's attempts to humanize Brainiac with the head-scratching explanation of his origin after the Flashpoint event was also egregiously awful, and in a way, I dare to say it kind of made me lose a slight bit of respect for the supervillain powerhouse character. He kind of came with this, you know, Crimea River type story as to why he became a supervillain, and I just didn't buy it. Moving on, another thing I didn't like about Convergence was the new 52 Earth Zero heroes had basically no involvement in the story whatsoever. It drove me nuts. I know the story was meant to mainly center itself around the Earth 2 heroes since Convergence. It's basically supposed to be a conclusion to the storyline after their war with Darkseid and Apocalypse. But the idea that Earth Zero heroes would be present for the event of Convergence yet not get involved is preposterous to me, even if the comic was already overinflated with an excessive cast. This absurdity is perfectly illustrated several times throughout the event when numerous beings from Earth Zero, including Superman himself, acknowledge that the universe is about to be destroyed. They acknowledge time is running out, and all that jazz, all the sky is falling, all that. Yet they do nothing about it, and it's just ludicrous. But however, I think one of the worst things about Convergence was its anticlimactic ending. Spoiler alert for all of you right here. If you don't want to hear how the story ends, you should probably stop listening. But the ending was really confusing, and to be honest, to me it was atrocious from an artistic perspective. Brainiac shows up, he tells his sob story about how he's been journeying through the multiverse and it's turned him in. He's kind of gotten jaded, he's lost his mind, he doesn't know what he's doing anymore, he just wants to go back to being normal Brainiac. Then he agrees to help the heroes undo the damage that he's done by returning everyone to their respective universes. He tells them that in order to restore the multiverse, that Flash and Supergirl have to go back in time to the first crisis and prevent it from ending the way it did the first time around, which ended with it collapsing down into one world, one universe. That's it. There was no battle royale, there was no Superman versus Brainiac or army of Superman versus armies of Brainiacs, or in a winner-take-all showdown. There were no epic revelations. There was nothing. Don't get me wrong, the ending makes sense from a time travel point of view, but from a continuity point of view and the point of view of anyone trying to find entertainment in this lethargic writing, it was crap. The whole event basically ends with the various heroes of the multiverse standing around, talking, making rational decisions, getting help from Brainiac, and then the universe is saved and almost everybody gets to go home and live happily ever after. The whole event basically cancels itself out and leaves you feeling like taking the time to read the 8-issue run was pointless to begin with. But like I said, there were things I liked about Convergence. None of them have to actually deal with the story itself, really. First and foremost, I like how they conflated the pre-52 universes and the new 52 universe and put them together to build a story, while also weaving in the previous Crisis events of the DC universe at the same time. That was pretty masterful. I like the idea behind it, even though the writing didn't carry it out too well. This led to several entertaining tie-ins surrounding the Convergence event, and although none of them really had any real impact on the event, there were lots of the tie-ins were pretty good. I enjoyed several of them. I like the fact, like I said, that the Earth 2 heroes got a resolution to the fallout with their battle with Darkseid, and their story will continue to be told in Earth 2 society when DC resumes its normal operations again in June. Earth 2 to me was one of the best titles that came out of the new 52, and although Convergence fell short, the story did a lot to further the story of those heroes, and I can't wait to see what problems they faced when they try to reestablish a new society on New Earth 2. I'm geeked about that, and as a fan of multiverses, I am prodigiously pleased that the Convergence event not only reinstated the multiverse, but created a multiverse of multiverses with infinite possibilities. A lot of DC fanboys out there have had a problem with this, but I, however, do not, because not only does this allow the writers to basically write whatever stories with whatever characters they want, which I'm all for, I also understand that the universe never realistically makes one thing of something. It never makes one of something. There isn't just one star, there isn't one molecule or one black hole or one galaxy or one solar system. So it stands to reason that if there's one universe, there would be multiple universes. If there's one multiverse, there would be multiple universes, so on and so on. That's how infinity works. But I will say this though, on the flip side, the idea of a multiverse of multiverses somehow making every story in the DC universe part of canon in respects to its own universe makes my head feel like exploding. It's just all too fucking confusing to try and sort out now. For example, if all the Elseworld stories are now canon as far as the Elseworld universe is concerned, how does that affect the primary universe of the New 52? how does that affect the first Crisis event? If the first Crisis event never happened, what happens to characters like Superboy Prime or The Flash or Supergirl or Superman, who basically sacrificed himself? The writers lead you to believe that he's sacrificing himself to get the reboot kicked into gear. But hell, really, does any of it even matter anymore? That's kind of how Convergence leaves you feeling. Everything's canon, so you can just basically cherry pick whatever you want from the past and make your own canon universe. I mean, I don't know. It feels like the DC universe all of a sudden became a quick clusterfuck. And it just strikes me as being kind of retarded, to be honest. But in the end, I would not recommend this story to any new readers as a jump-off point to get involved in the DC universe. I honestly felt like I spent more time trying to figure out what was going on and what the ramifications of restoring the multiverse would mean, more than I did on actually enjoying the story. The event basically came off as nothing more than a convenient way for DC to reboot their universe while pandering to all the people who complained about the New 52 in the first place. It typically reads from start to finish as a business decision that feels like a cop-out first, and then as a mediocre story with no point second. Personally, I was hoping to see a single DC universe where Red Sun Superman coexists with the Superman from New 52, Earth 1, and Kingdom Come, but instead, it seems like DC is just content to return to what the New 52 was, albeit with a few tweaks to the parallel Earths that they're bringing back. Ultimately, I feel like all the hype about the rise of a new DC universe it fell short, and Convergence doesn't exactly establish a new future for the DC universe. Instead, I feel like all it did was lead DC back into the past. So, all in all, I give the story a generous score of 5 out of 10, and I'll just leave it at that. I want to thank you all for tuning in. If you guys have anything to add, please leave a comment on the page, because I'm always interested in getting feedback from you fans. If you found any value in the podcast, please subscribe to my channel. You guys stay safe. I'ma stay black, and I will see you fucks next time. Peace.